Well, thank you all for coming, and it's my pleasure to be with you all again on this topic of this really sacred topic of Shiva and self-regeneration. But regeneration, self-regeneration, it's really all the same thing. Well, at this point, a good way to kind of start off this meeting, it seems, would be to hear from Shankaracharya on the it's a great passage. I believe it's from the Crest Jewel of Wisdom on the Bliss of Shiva.
The Bliss of Shiva by Shri Shankaracharya. I am neither earth nor fire, neither air nor ether, neither sensory powers, nor all these together, as all of these are transient. I am he that remains alone in deep, dreamless rest, the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. I am neither caste nor its divisions, neither right nor rule, nor am I the fixed mind or mood or mental exercise. This entire illusion of I and mine is rooted in the not-self and is wholly dispelled by the cognition of the self. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. I am neither mother nor father, neither the gods nor the worlds, neither scriptures nor oblations nor shrines. In deep, dreamless rest, I am neither abandoned nor in a state of absolute non-existence. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. Neither the Sankhya doctrine nor the Shaiva school, neither the Pancharatra nor the Jaina, neither the Mimamsaka nor any other standpoint is cognition of Tat. Through perfect union, my wholly pure nature is void of all but the self. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. I am neither above nor below, neither inside nor outside, neither midward nor forward, neither before nor behind. I am indivisible and partless, and all-pervading like space. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. I am neither white nor black, neither red nor yellow, neither stooped nor stout, neither short nor tall. I am of the formless nature of self-resplendent consciousness. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. There is neither teacher nor teaching, learner nor learning, neither thou nor I, nor this empirical universe. I am universal self-consciousness, the reality which is untinctured by any modification. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. For me, there is neither waking nor dream, nor deep sleep, nor am I conditioned by any of these states. All three are of the nature of nescience, but I am the fourth beyond these three. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. All this universe, being other than the self, is unreal. The self alone is complete, constituting the ultimate refuge, self-established and self-dependent. I am the secondless, supreme, and attributeless bliss of Shiva. Say not that it is one, as there can be no second, nothing other than that. There is neither uniqueness nor commonality, neither entity nor non-entity. This secondless one is neither void nor plenum. How can I convey this supreme wisdom?
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was just beautiful. So, who is Shiva? And why are millions to this day, not only in India, but in the worldwide Indian diaspora, so unconditionally committed to Shiva and so transported by the phrase, Om Namah Shivaya? Om, I bow to Shiva, the auspicious one, the supreme self. Shiva is reverenced by millions as the quintessential paradigm of spiritual discipline, asceticism, renunciation, and regeneration. In our contemplation this evening of a metaphysical reality who is a bridge between the transcendent and the immanent, between heaven and earth, we will explore some of the reasons why this sphinx-like and enigmatic figure is so spiritually compelling and psychologically therapeutic. In attempting an answer to this question, we will try to fathom the depths of this quote from Sri Raghavan Iyer, which reads, Shiva, the Mahayogan, is the supreme exemplar of effortless asceticism and the highest creative meditation. The principal sources of this presentation are no less than Madame Helena P. Blavatsky, a 19th century Theosophist, Sri Raghavan Iyer, a 20th century Theosophist, and Sri Shankaracharya, an 8th century scholar, philosopher, and teacher of Advaita Vedanta. This is an opportunity to gaze into the eyes of HPB. She, like great teachers, is an embodiment of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva all in herself. And to me, a more recent teacher is Sri Raghavan Iyer. You can see the compassion, and at the same time, there's a certain Shiva quality of being in and out of time both. Now, the attribution of these sources are not meant as any kind of final authority, but instead as simple acknowledgement of whom I had received inspiration. So, again, who is this Shiva? This Shiva, who is on the one hand called the auspicious one, and on the other, the destroyer, and who is one of the three major deities of Hinduism, along with Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and who altogether comprise the sacred Hindu Trimurti. Now, speaking of two hands, on the one hand, Shiva is the omniscient yogi who lives an ascetic life on Mount Kailash. And on the other is the householder with his wife Parvati and his two children, Ganesha and Kartikeya. And I should also mention their 5 daughters, one of which is named Sundari, meaning the beauty of Shiva. My daughter's middle name is Sundari, so I got that in. The prominent iconographical attributes of Lord Shiva are one, the third eye on his forehead, and you have the snake Vasuki around his neck, and you have the adorning crescent moon often portrayed, and there's also the holy river Ganga flowing from his matted hair. And yet, the most important of these attributes is his aniconic, meaning abstract, relatively unadorned representation in the form of the Shiva lingam, signifying that Shiva is himself, in essence, formless, limitless, transcendent, and unchanging. He is totally indifferent to earthquakes, cataclysms, and geological changes. He's untouched by everything. He is the immovable rock. Seated in contemplation, Shiva assumes a posture which represents mental and spiritual heroism. He's the archetypal man of renunciation. And at the same time, he's also the archetype of every seeker. Engraved within his sphinx-like face is Shiva's turning of human souls towards the mysteries, towards the esoteric. For some, he is an ideal. For others, he is an object, an icon. Many people have that Shiva Nataraj in their meditation chambers. For students of the secret doctrine and the Gupta Vidya, he is also an actual hierophantic yogin, the paradigm of all yogins. He's the paradigm of the perfect human being who is fully and universally self-conscious. Contemplation of Shiva involves going within, symbolized by silence rather than any form of speech. He is the strength and the stamina to enter a series of self-regenerative meditations. He is spiritual self-regeneration for the sake of the humanity of the future. Shiva indeed is in another part of himself Vishnu, and yet in another part Brahma. What for a human being is a full lifetime is like a moment for Manu. What is a lifetime for Manu is like a day for Vishnu. What is like a lifetime for Vishnu is only a day for Shiva. In the Shiva Nataraj, the dance of Shiva, he becomes a living link between Parabrahm and Ishvara, and between the unmanifest and the manifest logos. He carries the drum, the cyclic beat of time, but he himself stands outside of time. Yet Shiva is also accessible to each human being, including the most sinful and depraved. He can be seen constantly at work, destroying the froth of complacent illusion. Ofttimes garlanded with skulls, he dances in the crematorium. Shiva is the capacity to reduce delusions to ashes. He helps transcend one's mental and conceptual maps, the luggage of various religions, various belief systems. He represents the pristine seed of new beginnings rooted in fearlessness. There is a Sufi poem which says, "Earth relieves the seed and guards it trustfully, and it dies. Then, what teeming life rewards it for self-sacrifice?" Shiva is the universal self of all life and all nature. Shiva is Fohat, the very cohesive force itself in all systems. Equally, the forces of anti-cohesion and dissolution in all systems. Shiva represents nearly all things in the English language that start with the letters RE. This is because the orbit of the sacred is inherently revolutionary. Revolution is Shiva. Reincarnation is Shiva. Rebirth and renewal are Shiva. Redemption and regeneration are Shiva. Just so is renovation. Recycling is Shiva. The cycle of return is Shiva. Returning where? Returning home is Shiva. Returning back to one's true nature as a godlike being is Shiva. Returning home to the one source is Shiva. Shiva is returning home to the Om. Shiva represents the whole cycle of sacred vows and commitments, and of course, being tested by those vows. Shiva witnesses the whole and complete cycle of learning and growth all the way through to the triumph of redemption. He's all forward progress and every instance of temporarily falling back, as we all do. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But he is the whole cycle. And as is depicted in the Shiva Nataraj, he is voluntary self-control, balance, dynamic equilibrium, all of which are carried to their highest point, where they become effortless and full of joy. One of the aspects of Shiva is that of the ferocity of Rudra, the storm god. Yet, as Albert Einstein has said, the Lord God is subtle, but malicious he is not. This is where you get to meet the family. You know how all the children hear about Aunt so-and-so and Uncle so-and-so, but at a family reunion, they get to meet them all. Here, we have not only Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is the guy with 4 heads, by the way. And I'm not sure I can make them all out, but they are all in celebration at some kind of an occasion of Ganesha, who happens to be Shiva's son. You have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, but you also have their female counterparts as Sarasvati, Lakshmi, and Kali. And we mentioned before in another slide that Shiva indeed is in another part of himself, Vishnu, and yet in another part, Brahma. It is said that for a human being, a full lifetime is like a moment for Manu, etc. Now there is a selection that I'd like to read to you from H.P. Blavatsky, where she's talking about Svayambhu, which is really the synthesis, the 7th crowning synthesis of all 6. You have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and you have Sarasvati, Lakshmi, Kali. And then there's a way of thinking of them all at once, according to HPV. She writes, what in reality is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva? The threefold ray issuing directly from the light of the universe, Svayambhu, that is the power of the spirit that gives life to and fecundates matter, which has been personified in Sarasvati, Lakshmi, and Kali, which are the three representations of Prakriti, matter, the three goddesses of the three gods. These three pairs, which have been synthesized in Svayambhu, the unmanifested deity, are the symbols that personify this unseen presence in all the manifestations of nature. In short, Brahma and Sarasvati, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Shiva and Kali represent in their totality spirit and matter in their threefold quality, which is creation, preservation, and destruction. Regarding the Trimurti, she writes, Svayambhu is the first emanation or ray of Parbrahm, attributeless divinity, the first breath of its spirit. It is Trimurti, the synthesis of the three spiritual powers in union with the three material powers. She continues, in ancient India, religion was closely tied with the contemplation of nature. Universal truths and the very essence of truth were personified in deity. Every manifest truth, no matter what it consisted of, had a direct relationship to divinity or self-existent truth. In the strange mythology of the Brahmanas, which at first glance is still more legendary than Greek mythology, and generally in their still stranger conception of the world, a profound philosophy is concealed, nonetheless. The outer form of idolatry is but a curtain which hides the truth like the veil of Isis. But this truth is not given to all. For some, the curtain hides not the countenance of Isis, but only empty space disappearing into the impenetrable, for them darkness. For others, light pours forth from there. For those not endowed by nature with that innate inner sense possessed by some, which the Hindus so rightly call the third eye or the eye of Shiva, it is by far better to be content with the fantastic patterns on the curtain. For such, there is no penetrating into the depth of the impenetrable darkness, no filling of empty space. But he who has the third eye, or speaking more clearly, who is capable of transferring his vision from the grossly objective on to the purely inner ground, that one light shall see light within the darkness, and in the seeming emptiness discern the universe. I'd like to introduce you to a very old bird. I'm not sure if he's a crow or if he's a raven. I won't start talking about Edgar Allan Poe. Shiva's immensity of perspective is found in the discourse of Basunda, who is this bird, to the sage Vasistha. Basunda is a name for the immovable Shiva, the witness of all cycles. He sits in this tree, which somehow survives everything, all changes, all manvantaras, all cycles, all systems, all star systems, all the rounds and the races, everything. So Vasistha, who is the sage teacher of Rama in the Ramayana, he's telling of a time when he went to visit this ancient crow who had perched himself in this equally ancient, very large, wish-fulfilling tree called a kalpa tree. And he had the intention of interviewing this bird. And the bird tells him a lot about what he's doing in that tree. So Basunda says, you see, this kalpa tree whereon we dwell stands firm and unshaken amidst the revolutions of ages and the all-destroying blasts of tempests and conflagrations. This great arbor is inaccessible to beings who dwell in other worlds. Therefore, we reside here in perfect peace and bliss, apart from all disturbance. So stable is this tree that there is no danger, O sage, that can betake us here, just as there is no evil that can betide the inhabitants of heaven. How can we, O great sage, ever be exposed to any danger, abiding in this tree which defies all calamities? Because of the endless horizon of perspective and the universal self-consciousness of Shiva, sages such as Vashista and even the mighty Mahatmas are in absolute reverence of Shiva in whatever form he takes. Even the Mahatmas, who are possessed of immense powers, who do so much for humanity in their capacity as bodhisattvas, who are revered by Theosophists and mystics alike, ceaselessly bow down to Shiva, for they are in a state of total awe before the immensity of the boundless mental horizon of Shiva. The higher the Mahatma, the greater the reverence. Shiva here is depicted as Dakshinamurti, the south-facing guru of gurus, the initiator of initiates in the temples of South India. As such, Shiva is the teacher of the highest beings in evolution, who sit together like brothers in a sublime field of gratitude, eager and ready to make a new start in the service of humanity. And Damon, I'd like to call on our second reader, if that's okay, to read. This is going to be the hymn to Dakshinamurti, and it's also by Shri Shankaracharya.
Om, longing for emancipation, I seek refuge in that self-luminous one who projected Brahma in the dawn of manifestation and revealed to him the meaning of the Veda, and whose inspiration turns my attention towards the Atman. May peace, physical, mental, and spiritual, be on us forever. The cosmos is like a city reflected in a mirror, seen as if inside, but really outside it. As in a dream, it is an eternal activity, appearing outside, but actually inside. The truth is the supreme Brahman, one without a second. Atman is its reflection, seen through the media of the senses, mind, and intellect. The identity of the supreme Brahman and one's Atman is realized through self-illumination. He by whose grace that illumination comes to me, to that Dakshinamurti, the supreme being embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. He in whom this cosmos, prior to its projection, was rendered manifold through the magic of self-volition, in the manner of a mighty yogi, with the ceaseless energy of ideation, to that Dakshinamurti, the supreme being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. He, by whose light the unreal cosmos appears as almost real, who graciously conveys the truth of Brahman, who is known through apprehending the meaning of the mighty utterance, Tatvamasi, which realization alone terminates the cycle of samsara. To that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. He whose luster gleams through the senses, such as the eyes, like the light emanating through myriad holes in a pot, holding a brilliant lamp. He whose wisdom alone shows the mode of knowing signified by the true awareness of I know. He whose luminosity alone makes everything else shine. To that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. Vociferous pseudo-philosophers view the body, life breath, senses of perception, and organs of action, fleeting cognitions, and total non-existence as I, Atman. Their power of comprehension is comparable to that of feeble women and fickle children, the blind and the dull-witted. He who destroys this stupendous delusion caused by the inscrutable power of Maya, to that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. As the brilliance of the sun or the moon exists even when intercepted by Rahu during an eclipse, the power of cognition remains suspended from the senses and the mind during sleep. The Purusha or the self exists as the pure being, unrecognized through Maya's failing power. On waking, he becomes aware that he himself was asleep earlier. Similarly, the man of realization, on waking to the pure consciousness of the self, recognizes his ignorance as a past event and an apparent phenomenon. He who, by whose grace, the realization of the true nature of the Atman comes to me, to that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being embodied as the benign and auspicious Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. He whose existence and reality shine always and uniformly in various states, such as infancy and wakefulness, and who conveys the exalted knowledge of the Atman through the auspicious Nirjana Mudra. To that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. He by whose power of Maya the world is experienced during both waking and dreaming in all their variations, in cause-effect relations, such as that of master and servant, teacher and disciple, father and son. To that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. The moving and non-moving universe is but his subtle and unmanifest eightfold form: earth, water, fire, air, sky, sun, moon, and the Jivatman. He by whose grace all these manifestations disappear with the realization nothing exists accept the Supreme Brahman. To that Dakshinamurti, the Supreme Being, embodied as the auspicious and benign Guru, I offer my profoundest salutation. The touching of the tips of the thumb and forefinger of the right palm, raised in benediction, signifying the sacred union of the Paramatman and Jivatman and their essential identity at all times. The omnipresence of the Atman is clearly conveyed in this hymn. Through recitation and hearing, and by meditation on its innermost meaning, the devoted disciple attains to that omnipresent Atman and fully achieves oneness with it, including the unhindered lordship over the whole cosmos, becoming the very essence of the eightfold manifestation shown above. He enjoys the plenitude of realization and spiritual bliss. Epilogue. I bow down to Dakshinamurti, Lord and Teacher of all three worlds, who dexterously cuts asunder the painful shackles of birth and death, and who is to be deeply contemplated. Oh, the wondrous splendor beneath the banyan tree, there sits Guru Deva, a youth. The disciples are elders. The teaching is silence, and all doubts are dispelled.
Thank you ever so much. Just as we're contemplating this image of these elders who are listening to this youth who teaches in silence, what does it mean? This thing about the teacher is a youth, the disciples are elders, the teaching is silence. Could it be that the disciples themselves are wise beings? That they are protective elders in relation to orphan humanity? Could we say that the teacher, the initiator of initiates, embodying universal self-consciousness, embodying unconditional, attributeless compassion, embodying abstract, dimensionless truth, embodying unconditional love, that such a being would always be eternally young, ever fresh, always creative? And the teaching itself being silence, could that refer to the ideal fruit of any true teaching, namely the dissolution of the personal ego? Could it be that Shiva, as Dakshinamurti, the archetypal renunciate, the exemplar of Tapas par excellence, is capable of kindling the fire of self-imposed, self-induced, and self-devised discipline in not only in his disciples, but in all of humanity? This idea of the initiator of initiates and so forth is reminiscent of the passage in the Secret Doctrine. Many people refer to it as the Great Sacrifice. And in that passage, H.P. Blavatsky writes, he is the initiator called the Great Sacrifice. For sitting at the threshold of light, he looks into it from within the circle of darkness, which he will not cross, nor will he quit his post to the last day of his life cycle. Why does the solitary watcher remain at his self-chosen post? Why does he sit by the fountain of primeval wisdom, of which he drinks no longer? As he is not to learn, which he does not know, I neither on this earth nor in its heaven, because the lonely, sore-footed pilgrims on their way back to their home are never sure to the last moment of not losing their way, in this limitless desert of illusion and matter called earth life. Because he would fain show the way to that region of freedom and light, from which he is a voluntary exile himself, to every prisoner who has succeeded in liberating himself from the bonds of flesh and illusion. Because, in short, he has sacrificed himself for the sake of mankind. Though but a few elect may profit by the great sacrifice, it is under the direct silent guidance of this Maha, great Guru, that all the other less divine teachers and instructors of mankind became, from the first awakening of human consciousness, the guides of early humanity. It is through these sons of God that infinite humanity got its first notions of all the arts and sciences, as well as of spiritual knowledge. And it is they who have laid the first foundation stone of those ancient civilizations that puzzle so sorely our modern generation of students and scholars. So there's this great idea of a great sacrifice, but there is also, that's in the macrocosm, and the primordial archetype of sacrifice and the bodhisattva vow really lies therein. But you also have the microcosm in terms of the embodiment of sacrifice. There's a writer named B.P. Wadia who writes of this regenerative power. He says the performance of yajna, or sacrifice, is the means whereby the good and pious soul, who has hitherto undergone human evolution on the path of forthgoing, Avriti Marga, enters the Nivritti Marga, the path of return. No more need he propitiate the devas by rites and ceremonies, following the precedent of Daksha, the archetypal ritualist and procreator of the good but mortal man. He now comes under the regenerative power of the Egyptian Thoth, the thrice great Hermes, Shiva Mahadeva, the Mahayogi, the patron saint of all yogis, the archetypal renouncer, the teacher par excellence of immortality. And from Raghavan Iyer, Shiva, the regenerator, the greatest lover and the sovereign ascetic, redeems all beings with unbounded compassion because he is attached to no particular form. He is the master of tapas, self-conquest through meditation. And I think we'll let this be the last slide here. And this is something from, it's on tapas, the topic of tapas, and it's by Sri Muruganar, and who was a devotee of Sri Ramana Maharshi. And so this is Sri Muruganar. Well considered, the distinctive mark of consummate tapas comes to this: the steady, unbroken current of awareness that this bewildering, variegated crowd of world appearances is all self-made, concealing and revealing but the self. True tapas, which establishes the one in the self supreme, is but, I should read that again, which establishes one in the self supreme, is but the consecrated bliss of pure awareness, silently experienced as Shiva. Birds in the air and fish in water dart and leave no track behind, and none can see the path pursued by those that journeyed towards and attained the self. To recognize through reason supreme and in the heart renounce the relative. To act without a sense of I and mine is the sage's way of life divine. I'll stop share. Well, thank you all very much for listening.